One of the ways in which people will have or able to support racist attitudes or generalizations and stereotypes about an entire group, many times is due to either the actions of a few or by running into a person or two. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm driving down the street and I'm stopped by a police officer who tells me to get out the car and to sit on the curb. I do this wondering, why do you have me sit on the curb instead of asking for my license? Maybe I've ran a red light or whatever, and that's okay. I can take a ticket. But you have all of these guns. You look around and you see all these police officers with their guns trained on me. Afterwards, they would say that you look suspicious. The people you were with look suspicious. And there's no apologies given. And also while I was sitting there, you could overhear them freely say, we should book them, we should take them to jail. Now, this is not a made-up story. That actually happened to me while I was in college. And it happened while I was going to a Christian concert along with 3 sisters of the church. I was still saved then. I was saved then. So it's not like I got saved recently. I've been saved for quite some time. And these women, who essentially were, sisters of the church, they weren't known for going out and throwing their bodies around. And this is where I'm going to get to. So after the service, this concert, which was in Hollywood, after this took place, then we went driving. We said, well, let's go down Sunset Strip, because it was always something about Sunset Strip. So we drove down Sunset Strip. And until we got to a street called San Vicente, those of you in LA who you know about San Vicente, nothing bad about it, but you know about the street. We traveled down San Vicente, and as we're crossing Santa Monica Boulevard, I'm stopped by a police car. Now, I thought it was just one. And he tells me to get out the car. And so I obliged. I'm kind of wondering what's going on. Is all this for running a red light? I thought it was yellow. But if he thinks it's red, okay. And the thing that happened was it wasn't the worst with me. It was to the sisters that were in the car. And just in case you know, that sisters doesn't mean that they are related to me. But as Christians, we call each other brothers and sisters because we're related in Christ. So you make sure that you knew that. Well, the 3 women that were in my car, they had conjecture, they had thought that I was picking up some prostitutes after my crime spree, which was if anyone of you remember what the Datsun B210 hatchbacks looked like, that's what I was in. It was my mother's car. She allowed me to go out with her car and go for a date. Not date, but go for a service. And what they did to the women, they strip searched them. Now, being Christian women, they not usually subjected to strip searches. And these were all women who were dressed in either long dresses or long skirts. Nothing catchy about it. So you could not So you can figure that these people are not or were not involved in any acts regarding prostitution or being hookers or whatever. But they cried, and I understand why they cried, because they were violated for really no good reason. Just as a, what do you call it? My car looked like the one that was used in the robbery, alleged robbery. Why am I saying all this? The reason why I'm saying this is because that would be my experience with police officers. This was probably, I believe this was not the LA City, this was the Sheriff's Department. Now, I could say from that experience that the LA Sheriff's Office is racist. Because would they do this to a person of a European origin? Would they do that to a person? Would they assume that ladies who have dresses that are better suited for church going than it is for walking the streets? Would they have done that? And there would be many that would say no. But if I took that as evidence of rampant racism, many of you would, some would jump on the bandwagon, while many others would say, and they would make all type of excuses for it. Now, I'm not telling you this to say that the LA Sheriff's Department was or is or will be racist. That's just my experience, but it's anecdotal. This means that if I want to then take that experience and apply it to all other things that are taking place in this country, which is what many people do, then it could be incorrectly applied to people who are honestly and seriously trying to do their work, who would have frowned, even in the same unit or same department, would have frowned upon the tactics used on that particular night. But usually you deal with situations as you handle it. Now, if I took my situation and then added it to other similar situations of other people that have experienced the same things, then you may have a case. But if it's just you and only you can make your conclusions based upon that, whatever you happen to be, but it would be less of an accurate picture. That's what I mean by anecdotal information. Whether it's happened to you or whether you've heard of it, or let's say, for instance, and this has happened for real too. I believe this Mexican immigrant killed this poor woman. And she was of European descent. But that particular incident, as horrific as it was, and as violent as it was, is often used by many people to point out that the whole group of immigrants are inherently violent. Inherently, their minds are messed up. They're mentally unstable. They're all let's say, involved with drugs or involved with those that try to illegally smuggle people into this country. But they use that as anecdotal evidence. Because what would happen is this. If you would then take that information and add it to something that already tends you to lean towards the idea that these people are dangerous, then this essentially acts as the evidence, so to speak. It's evidence. They're dangerous. See what that person did. Now, there are certain things that you can use to raise an objection to that view. Maybe you can use crime statistics that essentially show that illegal immigrants commit far less crimes against others than those of other those of other groups. See, and in other words, you have to really use a variety of facts and put them in proper perspective in order for you to draw conclusions. Because if you don't do that, then you are essentially leaning towards taking a situation that you've either experienced or heard about and applying that to an entire group and then acting accordingly. And that is wrong. Jesus teaches us to have no respecter of persons. And that's in all of our activities, whether it's in showing benevolence to somebody, whether it's trying to judge a group, or whatever happens to be. Essentially, even when the scripture that they usually take, there's one instance in the letter that Paul wrote to Titus, speaking about the Cretans and how one man's witness of them being brute beasts, evil, slow bellies. But even though he said this is true as a witness, this is true, he also did not, and again, this is only one section out of that entire book that was written to Titus, this entire letter, entire epistle that was written to Titus, said anything close to something stereotypical. But many people will use that as evidence. Again, what do you call it? Anecdotal information. And if you're using anecdotal information, then you are prone to charge an entire group with what one or two people do. Let me give you another example of that and see how this maybe fits into the picture. What if I had said that the person who killed Charlie Kirk is like those who he looks like? We should be careful of them because they're unstable and they might go off and kill somebody. Now, you would think of that as, that doesn't make any sense, right? Correct, because it doesn't make any sense. It's just one person, his own views, whether he's mixed up or not, whether you like or hate Charlie Kirk, the fact that essentially that this person was the one who did him in. Some people were quick to call him a leftist. Some people noted that his family was most definitely right-leaning. So in other words, you don't know where this person was. But if I should take that instance and apply it to say that people of European descent are violent, they're prone to kill anyone. Of course, many would, what are you doing? What are you saying? That doesn't make any sense. There's only one person. And you'd be absolutely right. It's only one person. As well as those who shot up all those people in Las Vegas, spraying the whole ground with bullets, over 500 casualties. And fortunately, not 500 deaths, but that's still enough to give anyone that's been hit by a bullet or by essentially causing a stampede and then you get trampled over, that is not a good feeling. Or the one who shut out Parkland High School. You can go through the list. But if I said that this is the mindset of a particular group of people, then many of you would be up in outrage, and you would be right. You would be absolutely right. You would have a reason to be outraged at my analysis and deduction from that. But if that's the case, then why would you use one or a few activities? Well, if they weren't here, so-and-so would not have been dead. Correct. You're absolutely right. I got to give that to you for that too. But I can say the same thing about, though, if that person wasn't there, if that group wasn't there, there would be no shooting at Parkland. There would have been no shooting at Sandy Hook. There should have been no shooting at Columbine. And you can go all down the list. What if I said essentially, if these people weren't here, then Sharon Tate would still be alive. And Leo LaBianca would still be alive. And you remember those of you that were alive at the time of the Manson family killings. You said, well, that was just a nutty person who drew all these unstable minds. And again, you would be absolutely right. But he wanted to start a race war. He wanted to do something, and he wanted to start a race war. He wanted to, prompted by these killings, and then they would blame black folks for it. And of course, there would be and of course, because those of European descent would definitely outnumber those who were black in both numbers as well as firepower. So you may even say, maybe Charlie Manson was racist. Maybe some of his followers maybe didn't know his entire story, but maybe some of them were racist as well. But would that be attributed to the entire group? No. You wouldn't. Now, I'm not saying in this particular post here that I don't believe there's racism. That's not my point. Yes, I believe that there's racism. Some people are definitely racist. And I also believe that some of the portions of this system, as it stands right now, lends itself to produce figures of that would lean towards one group being more penalized than others. And that could have a racist tone, not necessarily in the direct application of it, but in the factors that lead up to those numbers. In other words, it's more complicated. And instead of dismissing whether something is racist or not, we should be more diligent in those causes and see if those causes are addressed, would that perhaps level the numbers. But at the same time, I'm also calling for even those who have been touched by actions, negative actions caused by certain people, that you would look not at your particular identity. I know that would be hard to do because essentially someone that you love was hurt or was killed. And that's not a good thing. And the people that are responsible for it should be brought to justice, should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and should be punished accordingly. That I agree with. But whether you then extend that to an entire group of people, then that becomes more problematic. And I don't think that we should be in the practice of extending the actions of a person or a group of individuals to an entire group. I think that many people in the LA Sheriff's Department are very conscientious. But on that night, that I suffered this humiliation, and more important, the sisters that were with me suffered this humiliating embarrassment and fear. But if I applied that to the entire sheriff's department, although there are times where I would say, that was something that if I was of a European descent, that wouldn't happen to me. I still believe that. But I believe it was those people that were involved in what was going on. I'm not blaming the entire law enforcement agency. I'm not blaming I'm not blaming the entire LA Sheriff's Office. Could there be people that were racist in that particular time? Yes, they probably could have been. And maybe those were the people that I came in contact with. But again, if I applied what happened to me to an entire group, then that would be insensitive and probably error-filled on my part. I would have had to check to see if there were others who had the same or similar instance attack. Dealing with them. And so therefore, essentially, if there's a whole group of us, and we've all been exposed to something like that, and we find that essentially that a majority of those in that division of the sheriff's department acted a certain way, then yes, I can say they are racist. But as I said before, we cannot let anecdotal evidence cloud our vision. And as Jesus said, we should not hold respect of persons. And that is something that I will continue to go to. You call those that are racist, who are clearly racist, call them as you see it. Whatever a man thinks he is, so is he. If he reveals himself by saying certain things, then you can take that as proof. But essentially, be careful about applying whole generalizations based upon a case or two. Now, if this is something that you see that happens over a period of time, and they continue to do it over and over and over, then you have basis for it. But again, last time, anecdotal evidence does not equate to it being applied for an entire group. So be careful of that. Whether it's us saying racism, whether it's Europeans saying that essentially only people that are coming to this country are robbers and killers and mentally unstable, and that people even in Africa are loosening their prisons to send them to America. Be careful about that. Be careful, because it could backfire on you. Because if you do something to somebody, they may blame your particular group based upon what you do. In other words, everyone, understand you're not in a fishbowl. Your actions are read of men. And as saints of God, we're living epistles read of all men. If our epistles ends up demonstrating our attitude deals mainly with race, then that's what people are going to see. If you want a different story, write a different epistle. God bless you. Love you in Jesus' name.